I never like looking too far ahead because you can never quite gauge on the astrology. It's not, I think one of the problems with astrology is people expect it to be absolutely certain,
Yes.
and
like a psychic.
Yeah. And when it can't be 100% absolutely certain and accurate, then it's not worth thinking about. My view is it tells you about potentials and possibilities,
Yes.
but you have to kind of wait a bit to see where on the spectrum certain things are going to work out in the general context of what's going on, because with some people it does one thing, with other people it will work in a slightly different kind of way.
Yes. Well, I mean, I always like that quote by Cardano, which was by the science and by the art. That to an extent with astrology, there's the technique, which is like the science, the method. And then there's the interpretation, which is an art and is open to, as you say, different takes, because people are going to come from different contexts and maybe, they've got a whole different worldview, and that's okay. I agree with you that I think it's not helpful to think of it as an exact science. And even the Babylonians and the Mesopotamians who were approaching it from kind of like a quasi-scientific point of view, where they were sort of collecting all the phenomena, they were writing it all down, but then they would still say, with their eclipses, if this and that, then this. So there would have to be a sort of a number of factors in play before they, a prediction could go in this direction. So there was definitely room for maneuver. And, and I know this is quite a topic at the moment with AI and with this idea of sort of forecasting and that sort of stuff. And I don't really think that it's about, as you say, trying to be a psychic. I mean, you must get this on your website, people sort of saying, oh, but you were wrong about this. Or,
I remember reading some years ago, there was a theoretical physicist who tripped into astrology because someone in the family or whatever, and someone else who knew astrology and explained what was going on in the chart. And he was quite intrigued for a very brief while, because men do like explanations for things. I've never cared about why it worked. As long as I have a rough idea of how it works, that will do for me. But he said there was a theory by David Bohm, the theoretical physicist, about an implicate universe out of which the explicate universe unfolds. And what the implicate universe is, which is a realm of potentials and possibilities.
Yes.
And theoretical physicists, I think, believe that the essential nature of the universe is mathematical. And don't ask me what that means, but it kind of fits in with astrology. I think astrology taps into that underlying realm of potentials and possibilities. And you never, within a context, you can see what's going to happen, but you never quite know out of that possibility or that possibility what is going to happen. My best explanation for this is Pluto hitting your moon. Now, the moon is about mother figures, childhood, home. Pluto is about transformation. For some people, it will bring up all sorts of childhood memories. It will bring up intense relationships with mother figures or remembering back to the past and getting all angst-ridden about it. And for other people, the house will fall down or cracks will appear in the house because it affects the domestic life. So to some degree, it depends on the person. How they interact with the universe and themselves. And it may be to do, and I hate this explanation, but it does actually work. It may be their level of development. In spiritual astrology, you get more evolved souls. As I say, I hate the whole elitist bit, but certain people will manage to use the influences in a different way to those who are less evolved or whatever, or less aware. It's really much more to do with awareness than anything else. So it's arranged within this particular context, so you can tell whether the drainage in the house is going to back up or you're going to fall out with your mother. And they sound as if they're not the same thing, but in astrology, if you look at what the moon covers as an area, it's within that context. So
yes, absolutely. I mean, and at the end of the day, it's a language, and everybody is going to use and interpret language and symbols differently, and they're going to apply differently in different situations. And that, to me, is the beauty of astrology, is that it's not fixed. It's not this universal thing, this law that you can apply. It's sort of unilaterally across all situations at all times in all places. That's what makes it so specific. And it's why you can keep using the same symbols over and over in different situations with different countries and come to different conclusions.
Yes, I was just thinking in medical terms, you get some conditions which are a mixture of who you are in your genes with certain external factors. So it's not just one thing. It's a really complicated mix, which is what comes out of the end of it. But people who like astrology find it extremely useful. Putting a context on where they're at, often it makes decisions for them. I do a lot of work in India. I used to go out there quite a lot. They tend to like very definite predictions. When am I going to die? And I say, I don't know. And I wouldn't tell you even if I did know.
Yes, the ethical sort of problems around that. Absolutely.
They do like it being more definite. Business people, you can be very helpful. You can do astrocartography. Do not go and live there because it won't work for you. Or do go and live somewhere else, because plotting the birth chart on a world map will show you where you can settle down happily, where you can go on vacation, where you can run into accidents. So I mean, there are all sorts of ways of using the different bits of astrology.
Yes, exactly. And I think that's what keeps astrologers interested and engaged, for as long as they are. That it is like a lifelong interest and pursuit and vocation. And it grows with you as you grow, and so the astrology changes. Maybe you use different techniques, or you refine what it is that you use, and you're not so overwhelmed with, is this the best technique or isn't it? Is this the best chart or isn't it? It's just what works for me. And I think that that's fine. Patrick Curry's quite big on this too, that it is actually similar to the I Ching or any of the other divination systems, in that there is the participatory element, which is the astrologer, and they are going to come with a very particular point of view, perspective, context, background, and that's fine. That we shouldn't expect it necessarily to apply universally. That in that moment, that is that's what works. But everybody has free will, and so it's this combination of kind of choice and chance coming together. But people still have free will, so they can choose a different kind of path. So I mean, that's why with Trump, even though we know his chart, he's still unpredictable.
But I mean, do people have free will? This is one of the great issues which I've always struggled with. I think if you're self-aware and you're curious, you have free will. Most people are not curious and not particularly self-aware, and they amble through life being pushed and pulled by, you could call it the fates, but Jung would call it their unconscious. So life is complicated. I do think astrologers need to be detached and not interfere too much. And this particularly is true in political astrology, and it's very difficult to do. Not let your prejudices get in the way when you see someone you really dislike and they're really doing well. And you think, life is not fair.
Yes. I mean, the last election was very much like that, where, if you didn't want Trump to win, it was very difficult to actually give predictions that would be like with journalism, that would be fair and balanced and impartial. It became almost impossible, so I didn't do one. And I mean, that's why it would be nice to go back to a kind of a journalism that was a little bit more detached and sort of removed and less editorial and kind of opinion-led, in much, for the same reasons, that it's not necessarily about trying to badger this politician into doing what your interest group wants.
But you're right in predicting election. I mean, I thought Trump was going to win in 2016 and nobody else did. On the astrological world, nobody could believe it. But his stars were just, you couldn't miss it. The next time round, I knew that Biden was going to lose, and you couldn't say it. mean, everyone bleated, oh, no, you've got all that wrong. Oh, no, he was a lovely man.
Yes.
He's got a lot of Scorpio. There's a lot to Joe Biden that is not nice. He's got a Mars in Scorpio square Pluto, for heaven's sake. Anyway, it wasn't that obvious that Trump would win, but they were certainly going to lose. But anyway, it is one of the less pleasant functions of the astrologer is to make predictions about elections, because it's always a bit of a struggle to find out exactly, except very occasionally, like 2016, when he couldn't possibly have lost with all that stuff he had in his chart. It was Jupiterian. Jupiter is a very odd planet because everybody thinks it's lovely because it's successful, it's confident, it's enthusiastic. But of course, it's unfair. People are lucky unfairly. The world is unfair. Some people just aren't fortunate.
Yes.
And
It's
quite
true.
often, one who are fortunate is you really wonder what the fates were doing, because they're not doing any good for the universe. So,
Yes, I remember an astrologer, a mentor, kind of telling me that she thought that if you wanted a planet that ruled Cancer, as in the disease, that would be Jupiter. And I was like, no, but you can't say that, with Jupiter's a benefic. And she was like, yes, but it makes things grow unhealthily. It's, the tumors get bigger and bigger. What else are you going to sort of put it down to? I thought, you've got a point. And I mean, if you look at sort of certainly the Greek mythology, I mean, Zeus was not necessarily always a swell guy. So yeah, it's true that every planet has its kind of positive and negative qualities, in the same way that, yes, we can talk about, the Leo Aquarius in the terms of, say, dictatorships and authoritarians on one hand with Leo, and the populists on the other. But equally, you could switch that around. You could say, it could be Leo could be the charismatic leader, and the populists can sometimes, like at the end of the French Revolution, can turn very nasty. This kind of mob mentality. So it's all of the symbols have kind of positive and negative aspects to them, and it's, I think, always worth bearing in mind, because people do like to isolate a symbol and then it must mean that all the time, but it doesn't.